"James, listen up," Michael said, leaning in with a serious expression. "If you want to live like a king, with all the money, respect, fancy cars and women at your feet, there's a price to pay." James raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What price are we talking about?" Michael's voice dropped to a whisper. "You have to sacrifice your own mother. It's the only way to unlock the door to true wealth and power." James recoiled, shock written all over his face. "Are you serious? Sacrifice my own mother?" Michael nodded gravely. "I know it sounds crazy, but trust me, I've seen it work. You'll thank me later." Once upon a time, there lived a wealthy man named Chief Leonard. He was highly respected and influential in his community, known far and wide for his generosity and wisdom. Chief Leonard had a beautiful wife named Sarah, who was known for her grace and kindness. They were blessed with 2 daughters, Emily and Lily, both of whom inherited their mother's beauty and charm. Additionally, they had a son named James, a bright and ambitious young man eager to make his mark on the world. Together, they lived in a grand mansion surrounded by lush gardens, the envy of all who beheld their splendor. Chief Leonard's family lived a life of luxury and comfort, with servants attending to their every need and extravagant feasts held in their honor. Despite their wealth, they remained humble and generous, always willing to lend a helping hand to those in need. Emily, the eldest daughter, possessed a gentle and nurturing spirit. She spent her days tending to the sick and elderly in the community, earning her the nickname Angel of Mercy among the villagers. Lily, the younger daughter, was known for her vivacious personality and love for adventure. She often explored the vast grounds of their estate, discovering hidden treasures and befriending the creatures that roamed the land. James, the only son, was determined to follow in his father's footsteps and expand the family's business empire. He spent countless hours studying under his father's guidance, learning the intricacies of trade and commerce. However, Chief Leonard's life took a sudden turn when he invested in a business that turned out to be a scam. He was devastated to learn that the people he trusted were actually fraudsters, and he lost all his money. Unable to pay back his debts, the bank seized Chief Leonard's house, leaving his family with nothing. Feeling defeated and lost, they had to move to a small, remote community far away from the city. Life in the new community was tough, and Chief Leonard fell into despair. He started drinking heavily, coming home late, and arguing constantly with his wife Sarah. But Sarah never lost hope. She prayed day and night, asking God to intervene and help her family through their difficult times. She believed that with faith and perseverance, they could overcome any challenge that came their way. Despite his struggles, Chief Leonard couldn't ignore the strength and resilience of his wife. Her unwavering faith inspired him to find hope again, and he vowed to do whatever it took to rebuild their lives and regain what they had lost. Despite his hardships, Chief Leonard refused to give up. He started working as a laborer, taking whatever job he could find to provide for his family. One day, despite Sarah's warning about a terrible nightmare she had about him, Chief Leonard insisted on going to work. He said he had to put food on the table and left for work, leaving Sarah worried. As Chief Leonard climbed a building at his workplace, tragedy struck. He slipped and fell, crashing to the ground below. He was rushed to the hospital, his life hanging in the balance. Sarah's heart sank as she received the news. She blamed herself for not being able to stop him from going to work that day. She prayed fervently for her husband's recovery, clinging to hope that he would pull through. Meanwhile, Chief Leonard fought for his life in the hospital, his body battered and broken. Despite the odds stacked against him, he clung to the hope of seeing his family again, determined to overcome yet another obstacle in his path. As days turned into weeks, Chief Leonard's condition remained critical. But Sarah never lost faith. She continued to pray for a miracle, believing that God would intervene and bring her husband back to her and their children. As Chief Leonard's health continued to decline, Sarah stood by his bedside, holding his hand and praying for a miracle. But despite the doctor's best efforts, Chief Leonard's condition worsened and he eventually passed away. Sarah was devastated. Where would she even begin to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives? Chief Leonard had been their rock, their protector, their everything. How could she go on without him? In the midst of her grief, Sarah found unexpected support from Chief Leonard's friend, Mr. Johnson. He had been like a brother to Chief Leonard and had always looked out for their family. Mr. Johnson stepped in to help Sarah and her children in their time of need. Mr. Johnson not only helped them clear Chief Leonard's hospital bills, but also provided them with a place to stay. He knew they were struggling after their landlord chased them out of their home because they couldn't pay the rent. What a kind and generous friend he was. With Mr. Johnson's support and the love of their community, Sarah found the strength to carry on. She opened a small shop to provide for her family and honor Chief Leonard's memory. Though she missed him dearly, she knew he would be proud of her resilience and determination to keep their family together. One day, Mr. Johnson came to see Sarah, and he had something important to say. He told her that he had been admiring her, even before Chief Leonard died. Sarah was shocked. "I thought my husband was your best friend," she exclaimed. Mr. Johnson nodded, understanding her surprise. "He was, indeed, my best friend," he admitted. "But I've always admired your strength and resilience, Sarah. You've been through so much, and yet you've never given up." Sarah was speechless. She had never imagined that Mr. Johnson felt this way about her. She needed time to process everything. I need some time to think about it," she stammered, still in shock. Mr. Johnson nodded understandingly. "Of course, take all the time you need," he said gently. "I'll be here whenever you're ready to talk." As Mr. Johnson left, Sarah's mind was in disarray. She couldn't believe what had just happened. She had always seen Mr. Johnson as a dear friend, but she had never thought of him in any other way. Now, she was faced with a decision that could change everything. Sarah knew she needed to tread carefully. She didn't want to hurt Mr. Johnson's feelings, but she also didn't want to betray Chief Leonard's memory. It was a difficult situation, and Sarah didn't know what to do. When Mr. Johnson returned to ask Sarah if she had thought about his proposal, he was eager for her response. But to his surprise, Sarah shook her head and said, "No. I'm not ready yet," she explained firmly. Mr. Johnson couldn't believe it. He had been so sure that Sarah would say yes. He felt a surge of anger rising within him. "How dare you reject me?" he exclaimed, his voice filled with fury. Sarah stood her ground, undeterred by Mr. Johnson's anger. "Even if I were ready to date someone, it would never be someone close to my late husband," she declared, her voice steady. Mr. Johnson's fury only grew stronger at Sarah's words. How dare she speak to him like that after all he had done for her and her children? In a fit of rage, he gave Sarah and her children 2 days to pack their belongings and leave the house he had rented for them. Not stopping there, Mr. Johnson also took back the mini-shop he had rented for Sarah, leaving her without a source of income. Sarah was stunned by Mr. Johnson's actions. She couldn't believe that he would turn on them like this. With tears streaming down her cheeks, Sarah and her children left their home, feeling betrayed and abandoned by Mr. Johnson's actions. They had nowhere to go, and the future seemed bleak and uncertain. As they wandered the streets, Sarah cried out to God, asking why they were in such a desperate situation. She couldn't understand why they were facing so much hardship and suffering. Amidst their struggles, a kind-hearted Samaritan spotted Sarah and her children as they wandered the streets, lost and hopeless. Touched by their plight, the Samaritan felt a surge of compassion and offered them a place to stay. With gratitude in their hearts, Sarah and her children accepted the Samaritan's generous offer, finding temporary refuge from their hardships. She couldn't understand why they were facing so much hardship and suffering. One day, as James was working at a building site, he encountered an unexpected surprise. His old friend Michael, who owned the uncompleted building, spotted him and was shocked by James's condition. They hadn't seen or spoken to each other in years, and Michael couldn't believe how much James had changed. James, equally surprised, couldn't believe his eyes when he saw Michael. He remembered him as a struggling young man, but now Michael was wealthy and successful. It was like seeing a completely different person. Upon seeing James's dire circumstances, Michael was moved with empathy. Despite their long separation, Michael extended a heartfelt invitation to James to come to his house. He wanted to offer his old friend support and assistance during his time of need. James was touched by Michael's gesture of kindness. Grateful for the lifeline extended to him, he accepted Michael's invitation with a mix of humility and relief. When James arrived at Michael's house, he was greeted by a sight that left him utterly astonished. Michael was living in a massive mansion that resembled a paradise on earth. James couldn't believe his eyes as he took in the grandeur of the surroundings. The mansion stood tall and majestic, surrounded by lush gardens and sparkling fountains. Every corner exuded opulence and luxury, with lavish furnishings. It was a far cry from the humble beginnings James remembered from their youth. As Michael welcomed James inside, he couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and disbelief. How had his old friend achieved such incredible success? What had happened during their years apart to transform Michael's life in such a dramatic way? As they sat down to catch up, James listened in amazement as Michael shared the story of his journey from adversity to prosperity. It was a tale of perseverance, hard work, and a stroke of good fortune that had led him to where he was today. As the evening wore on, Michael couldn't help but notice the lingering sadness in James's eyes. Sensing his friend's unease, Michael gently broached the subject, asking James how they had fallen on hard times despite his father's once great wealth. With a heavy heart, James began to narrate the tale of their family's downfall. He recounted the devastating loss they had suffered due to a fraudulent business deal, the repossession of their home by the bank, and the subsequent struggles they faced in their new community. As James spoke, Michael listened intently, his shock and disbelief growing with each passing moment. He had never imagined that his friend had endured such hardship and adversity in his absence. The realization of James's suffering filled Michael with deep sorrow and empathy. Moved by his friend's plight, Michael felt an overwhelming sense of pity and compassion. He couldn't fathom the pain James and his family had endured, and he resolved to do whatever he could to help them overcome their difficulties and rebuild their lives. As James prepared to leave, he couldn't shake the feeling of disappointment lingering within him. Despite his hopes that Michael would offer him some financial assistance or support to lift his family out of poverty, he left empty-handed. Not even his transport fare was provided by Michael. Feeling disheartened and saddened by the turn of events, James made his way home. As he walked through the door, his mother, who had been eagerly awaiting his return with news of hope, was shocked to hear his account of the evening. Sarah's heart sank as she listened to James's story. She had dared to hope that Michael's invitation would bring a glimmer of light into their lives, but instead, it only deepened the darkness of their struggles. Despite her disappointment, Sarah resolved to remain strong for her family, knowing that they had each other to lean on in their time of need. As they sat together in the dimly lit room, Sarah wrapped her arms around James, offering him comfort and reassurance. Though their journey had been fraught with challenges and setbacks, they refused to lose hope. A few days later, as James walked along the street, he spotted Michael approaching. His initial instinct was to turn and walk the other way, but Michael called out to him, urging him to stop. James hesitated, but curiosity got the better of him, and he reluctantly agreed to hear what Michael had to say. Once at Michael's house, James was led to a secret room hidden away from prying eyes. As he stepped inside, James was taken aback by what he saw. It was a room filled with strange symbols and artifacts, a place where rituals were performed. Michael motioned for James to keep quiet as he began to narrate his own story. He spoke of years of struggle and hardship, and how he had encountered a wealthy man who had initiated him into a secret cult. James listened in shock as Michael revealed the dark truth behind his newfound wealth. "And have you not wondered, seen any women around me? Or why I don't have a wife or children?" James nodded, realizing now the truth behind Michael's solitary existence. It was then that Michael dropped another bombshell. "I am instructed not to have anything to do with women or to have children," he confessed. James was stunned, unable to comprehend the implications of what he was hearing. "Why are you telling me all this?" James finally managed to ask, his voice trembling with disbelief. Michael's response sent a chill down his spine. "Because I want to help you," he said solemnly. "But first, you must meet my master." As James stood there, feeling scared and unsure, Michael's words sent a shiver down his spine. He knew he had to make a choice that would change everything for him and his family. Even though he felt uneasy, James couldn't ignore the desperation he felt to lift his family out of poverty. So, with a heavy heart, he reluctantly said, "Yes, I will." It was a tough decision, and James knew he was stepping into something dark and uncertain, but he was willing to do whatever it took to give his family a better life, even if it meant venturing into unknown territory. As James followed Michael to meet their spiritual father, a sense of unease washed over him. The enigmatic figure's piercing gaze made him feel uneasy, as if he could see right through him. "Do you truly desire wealth?" the spiritual father asked, his voice carrying a weight of authority. James hesitated, feeling a surge of conflicting emotions. On one hand, the thought of lifting his family out of poverty filled him with an intense longing. But on the other hand, he recoiled at the idea of sacrificing his own mother for the sake of riches. But before he could respond, the spiritual father pressed on, his tone insistent. "Are you willing to do whatever it takes to attain wealth?" he demanded, his eyes boring into James with unwavering intensity. James felt a knot form in the pit of his stomach as he grappled with the weight of the spiritual father's question. He knew that his answer would determine the course of his destiny, setting him on a path that could lead either to untold riches or unimaginable darkness. After a moment of agonizing deliberation, James nodded reluctantly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," he replied, his words tinged with resignation. "I will do whatever it takes to get rich." The spiritual father's expression remained impassive as he absorbed James's answer. With a solemn nod, he delivered his ultimatum once more, reminding James of the consequences of refusal. After James and Michael left the spiritual father's house, they made their way to Michael's house. As they entered, James couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered within him. But he followed Michael inside, hoping for some clarity amidst the chaos of his thoughts. When they got there, James was on edge, his mind swirling with questions and doubts. "Michael, how could you do this to me?" he blurted out as soon as they were inside, unable to contain his frustration any longer. "You never told me I was going to use my mother for ritual's sake." Michael's response was swift, his tone defensive. "Oh, please, James," he shot back, his irritation palpable. "I told you from the beginning. I said I was told not to get married nor have anything to do with women nor kids. But you blindly accepted, even after hearing everything. It's not my fault, bro." James felt a surge of anger rising within him. "But you could have warned me," he exclaimed, his voice cracking with emotion. "You could have told me the truth before it came to this." Michael's frustration boiled over at James's accusation. "When you were pressuring me to help you, this is one of the reasons why I never wanted to," he retorted, his tone sharp with resentment. "Now see where it has landed me." As their argument intensified, James realized the gravity of the situation. He had been blind to the consequences of his actions, and now he was faced with the harsh reality of his choices. As James arrived home, his mind was in chaos. He sank onto the couch, feeling overwhelmed by the weight of his decisions. Tears welled up in his eyes as he grappled with the reality of what he had gotten himself into. "What have I done?" he whispered to himself, his voice trembling with regret. Just then, his mother walked into the room, her face filled with concern. "What's wrong, James?" she asked, her voice soft and soothing. James wanted to confide in her, to pour out his heart and seek solace in her embrace. But the words caught in his throat, choked by the guilt and shame that consumed him. How could he tell her the truth? How could he admit that he had sold his soul for the promise of wealth? Instead, he forced a weak smile and shook his head. "It's nothing, Mom," he replied, his voice strained with emotion. "Just a bad day." But his mother could see through his facade. She could sense the pain and anguish etched upon his face. "You can tell me anything, James," she said gently, her eyes filled with love and understanding. As his mother left, James felt a heavy weight settle on his shoulders. He couldn't muster the courage to tell her the truth. She left him alone, unaware of the struggle consuming him. After his mother left him alone, James found himself grappling with an unsettling realization. He couldn't bring himself to tell her the truth, to admit the depths of his desperation. Instead, he was left alone with his thoughts, consumed by a chilling resolve. "I must sacrifice my mother," he whispered to himself, his voice trembling with uncertainty. "I really need to be wealthy. I want to be among one of the richest young men in this community." As James sat quietly, the weight of his decision pressed heavily on him. He couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in his stomach. He knew his choice would bring terrible results, not just for him, but for his family too. But, at that moment, the idea of becoming rich was stronger than any worries. Hello everyone. We've got a big question for you today. Do you think James will go through with using his mother for money ritual? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also, let us know if you want us to continue this story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with your families and friends. And make sure to turn on post notifications so you never miss a new video. Thanks for watching.